Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Semantics. We have Darby Centra.
And Reese Harrison. Big shout outs to Jelly Tupac, who couldn't be here this week. What have we got going on this week, Reese?
This week we have one of your friends, Darby.
Yeah. Katerina Annels, a fourth-year osteo student, is coming in to have a chat about her perspective at SCU and her perspective of being a student in this fine field. And who have we got coming up the week after Reese?
Mr. Andre Kleinbaum. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his last name.
Mm-hmm.
Apologies if it's incorrect, good sir. And at some time, we've got one of our first-year cohorts, Karen Young.
Coming in to have a chat about her experience of health in her body.
Yeah.
Great.
Diagnosis. So let's kick this off. Who have we got today, Darby?
Beautiful. Kat will be joining us in just a moment. She's just over in the clinic at the moment finishing up her shifts for the day, and we'll get her in to have a chat. So hold on tight and we'll speak to you soon.
See you then. So 3, 2...
Welcome back to Semantics Podcast. We have with us our special guest, our first inaugural guest for this podcast, Ms. Katerina Annels. Kat, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself? Why the field of osteopathy?
Left school with a scholarship into medicine, was always really interested in health and sort of wanted to see where it was going, really wanted to go down the path of specialising in alternative medicine, so looking at the possibility of integrative health centres, which actually are now quite common, but back then were really unusual, and in fact I hadn't even heard of one. Decided that going straight on to university wasn't quite where I was at, and I wanted to go and travel a bit first and sort of experience other cultures' ideas of health and healing, and a great way for me to do that was to become a chef. I'd already done quite a large amount of hospitality work and had got about half a apprenticeship cross-credited. So I became a chef and then spent 5 years travelling the world, notably spending some time in Morocco working with the Moroccan spice merchants, which is one of the things I love, is that over there you don't go to a pharmacy, you go to your spice dealer and he'll make you up a little blend for that, for whatever it is that you've got going on, you know. So
similar to a naturopath.
Yeah, exactly,
possibly.
Exactly. And you take it away and you cook it into your curry that day.
Great.
Oh.
You know, it's like here's your little spice it's made to go with your food. And I've always, being a chef and having that side of me, I've always been really excited by how food as medicine, as opposed to as, you know, something we separate them so much in our society, and I think that's a really sad thing because they come together so beautifully, and you can really use the same thing. By the time I finished my 5 years of traveling, which was amazing, I worked on luxury yachts all over the world. I got paid to travel. It was great. I came home and I knew I needed to get into studying and finding a little more consistency in my life, because chefing all over the world is amazing, but I wanted some roots in the ground again.
Yep.
And I looked into going back and doing medicine, because obviously that was where I was at then, and decided that the biomedical model to me was really limiting. I just looked at it and I thought, there's only so far you can go with that. You're really limited by what you're allowed to do. And also, people come into a doctor and they really expect to be provided with a magic pill. You know, you've got 5 to 7 minutes
Absolutely.
to figure out what's actually going on for someone and then prescribe them something. And very little of that can be lifestyle changes. And you've got to have a pretty fabulous doctor and a practice opportunity that lets you have half an hour consults.
Yeah.
And I just looked at that and I saw how unlikely that was for me to be able to do the things I wanted. And I started looking at other alternatives. And one of the big ones that came up for me was osteo.
Yep.
And the truth is that actually I looked at osteo, chiro, physio, OT. I looked at a whole pile of different degrees, and I actually took all of their core constituent courses, and osteo was the one that when I looked at it, I loved every single subject in it. I was like, I want to learn every single one of those things. Yeah. I've also had some pretty amazing osteopathic experiences in my life, notably with Maxwell Fravel. My younger sister had some real issues as a small baby, very bad developmental issues, and basically from when she was born to when she was about 18 months old, I had never once seen her awake and not screaming in pain.
Aye.
It was intense. She was either asleep or she was screaming. And my parents had taken her to every specialist and every person under the sun, and basically had been told, you know what, you're still young enough to have more kids, just put her in a home.
Wow.
Like, it was absolutely intense. And I remember some random person said, oh, there's this weird guy who comes up from Melbourne once a month. You should go and see him. And my parents took her in to see Maxwell and laid her on the table, and he put his hands underneath her head and she stopped screaming.
Just cranial.
Yeah, cranial work.
Wow.
She was awake and not screaming. And I just went, I don't know what you're doing, but you're a magician and you're magic, and don't stop.
Wow. That's, you're a fourth year student.
Yep.
So you're now in clinic. Give us an insight into some of the things that you've found difficult, or some of the rewarding things, things you did not expect at all, treating people from the public rather than just practicing on your fellow cohort or friends.
Clinic is an incredible experience and a very challenging one. I guess I need to put in here, in addition to doing my chef's apprenticeship, I also did a massage diploma, sort of just after I finished school. So I now run a massage practice and have continued to do that through my degree. So I treat people and have done for about 10 years. So the actual getting into clinic and treating people was not as huge a hurdle for me as it was for a lot of people. Actually, I found the biggest hurdle for me was being a beginner again, being okay with being a total beginner again, because I do treat people all the time, and then having to come back from that and actually go, I'm here to learn. I had to really make a deal with myself that student clinic was not actually about treating patients. Student clinic was about learning. And that was a huge definition for me, because lots of people go in there and they're really there to treat patients because that's what they need to learn how to do. Whereas for me, I really had to learn as much as I could about osteo, and sometimes that meant not doing a thing. I know that if someone comes in with this, I can do these things and they'll feel better. And for me, sometimes it meant saying, okay, what else can I do? What is it that I don't know will work but that I can try because my osteopathic training says I should try it? So that's definitely been the challenge around that.
So it's not so much treating people, it's more so incorporating non-massage therapy techniques.
Yeah, and I think it's a really big thing to remember in this degree too, is that you're not here to serve people. You're not here to get the best marks. You're not here to be, the best at this. You're not here to be the best student practitioner. They're all wonderful things.
Yeah.
But actually, you're here to learn the most you can for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes those two are not the same thing.
Yeah. And I think we've chatted before about, you said that you get 1,000 hours of prac that you have to fulfill. Is that 1,000?
Yeah, 1,000. And 1,000 hours is a huge amount of time.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, you only get 1,000 hours of supervised prac time.
Yeah. And then you're out.
Yeah.
And then you're on your own in a practice. Yeah. Or wherever you end up.
One thing that I tend to highlight, like in my own sort of journey of this osteo thing, is it's good to get good marks, but that's not the ultimate goal. It's good to be a good practitioner and learn how to treat proficiently and effectively and safely. But it's also, while we're here, we have the best resources that we possibly can imagine.
Absolutely.
So networking, I feel, is something that isn't stressed at all, but it is of so much importance that, you can have the best grades, but at the end of the degree, if you can't get somewhere to practice, then how good are you?
And a lot of it that I hear, speaking from your experience, Kat, is that you do come to uni in the same way that Reese and Jelly, who's not here, we all do. We come with life experience, and the majority of students who have entered this, they're not straight out of school. Do you think that has a major impact, or are you going through with multiple age people who are...
We certainly have a few people in our year who are school leavers, but definitely it's a majority of people with sort of previous life experience.
Yeah.
I think osteos generally, it's not the sort of thing that you leave school and you think, I'm going to be an osteo.
I'd never heard of it until
Same.
last year.
Yeah, the career advisor in year 12 when I was going through would not have suggested this path to me.
You know what I got, career advisor? I got an actor.
Great.
How can you tell someone they should be an actor? Like, that's probably the most useless piece of information that you can give a year 9 student in the world. You know what you should do, Reese? You should be an actor. What? Like,
Yeah.
okay. Tell me where to start.
It set you dreaming, though. It gave you a path that just kind of went, all right, well,
Yeah,
let's
that's
try
true.
on a whole bunch of different things. Yeah.
That's what acting is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying on a whole bunch of different awesome personalities and figuring out which one maybe works for you.
Yeah.
Being the best pretend person you can be.
Yeah.
It's all rehearsal.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely lots of different life experiences. And I think it is that, people get drawn to osteo because they've had an experience with an osteo generally. So it's often people who, they've already been converted to the magic.
Yeah.
We have had a few notable exceptions to that. We had one person in our year who, it was 4th year before he ever actually had an osteopathic treatment.
Great.
He'd done, not only had he decided to go and do osteopathy, but he's also done 3 years of a degree and never had seen an osteopath. And it was beyond me how you could do this. But he was so happy and he was so enthused by what he was learning and what he was engaging with that it didn't matter to him.
Yeah.
He didn't have a problem that he needed to see, but he could see that this was something that he could do that would have an impact on so many lives. And
Yeah.
and it engaged his brain and his body. And I think it's one of the things I really love about osteo is that it removes that sense of duality. I think Descartes got a lot to answer for telling us that everything is separate because one of the beauties of osteopathy is it lets us actually combine the two together, and it's something that can engage us in so many levels of our consciousness and our being and indeed needs to engage our patient on all those levels as well to really have a complete sense of healing.
Yeah. And so in your life experience, speaking of that duality, from the fields that we're interested in discussing, we come from a broad range where spirit meets science, and now there's a lot of research out there, things like mindfulness being measured by neuroscientists as a way of modulating our health or our immune system. In your experience, you mentioned this sense of duality. You've lived in an area that's different to here in a Muslim country. You come at life from many different perspectives. You've been a massage therapist. What's your relationship with spirit and science in what you're doing now? How do they inform each other?
I think that the science versus religion discussion, I always find it so entertaining because when you get right down to the depths of science and you get into, and yes, we're getting further and further down, but you get into quarks and you're still basing everything on faith. Actually science is still a religion of faith. And I know I'd make a lot of enemies saying that, but faith is an integral part of how we relate with the world. And whether you call that faith, whether you assign that faith to the religion of Christianity, the religion of science, or indeed just name it as spirituality and spirit, we still have an innate need to exist within a space of faith, because otherwise we have nothing to actually consolidate the universe with. Otherwise it really is just, nothing. Because I was going to say it's just a collection of atoms, but actually we've proved that, even that it comes down to a faith basis.
Yeah.
So.
Wow, and there's some big words in there, faith as well. But that perspective that people do put faith into different things, whether it's faith in their doctors or, in the case of your family, faith into this random man's hands who was able to provide something that was seen as magical. Yeah.
That's as Kat was explaining that question that Darby asked, my smile was from ear to ear because, the fact that you said science is a religion, I've often pondered that myself, like everyone sort of needs to exist within something to make themselves feel accepted or welcome in a particular thing. Like as humans, I feel like we're very communal people. No one really likes to be alone. And if they do, then, there's some aspect of them that wants to go out and reach out to people. That to me, the science is a religion. I can just see that in quotes, and it is. It really is.
And then there's different aspects of, is religion, like you were saying, Kat, is it spirit? And how do we then work towards a greater sense of peace with that? If religion is what has caused so much conflict, or, humans' interpretation of conflict, and we're working towards, in this podcast at least, holistic health, then where does peace come within that?
Yeah.
I remember, Kat, that we'd, luckily enough, had a conversation about your experiences with things like craniosacral, and we'd have had a conversation about new areas of research that are unfolding, craniosacral and depression, looking at mental health aspects. Can you talk to us about that just for a brief moment? Well,
I guess for me, I haven't done enough research into what there is, but what I've found is that there's very little existing research, as in lots of fields of osteopathy, into what it is that's going on. We just know that we get contraindicated to do something in severe depression and in epilepsy, and often I find you look at herbal medicines, you look at things that are contraindicated are because they have an effect. So clearly we know that doing craniosacral work has an effect on depression, has an effect on epilepsy. I have these two in particular in mind because I myself have suffered from both depression and have epilepsy. So there's something that I have a personal interest in.
Yeah.
I was really interested in the idea of being able to research that further as part of a master's project. But I quickly discovered that was far too in-depth for a master's project and in fact was a PhD. But I think there's a real basis out there for actually taking these things, just like with every part of osteopathy, we really need to have that evidence base. We need to look into what it is that we can do. We're actually a very young profession.
Absolutely.
And the thing that I love about osteo is, and as we were discussing before we actually popped the mics on, it's this beautiful melting pot. It allows us to bring so many different ideas. And in fact, that's what Steele did, is he went out and he found all of these awesome bits and pieces of different modalities and he brought them all together. So it's this amazing capacity to really draw from lots of areas and to make it into something that allows us to create a holistic healing with that patient. And I say with, not for, because really that's the greatest joy in osteopathy for me, is that I'm working with you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So to wrap this up, one question that I like to ask most of my friends that have done the undergraduate degree, it's a very intense degree, especially second year for those that are entering it. In hindsight, what are some things that may have been told to you to focus on that you went through, finished it, and thought back and went, what? No, that wasn't important. This was. What are some pieces of advice that you would give the undergraduate newcomers or people that are second or third year that are about to finish?
Certainly I agree with you. Second year is academically the most challenging. I think fourth year is emotionally the most challenging. Almost everyone has a significant emotional event in fourth year because it really is, I guess, part of the becoming of an osteo. From my personal experience, I think the biggest thing that I could say is the most important person in this degree is you. And putting your mental health, your physical health above getting an awesome grade for that test is definitely worth doing. And it took me a long time to discover that. But, actually going to the gym and and going for a beautiful big long walk. And for me, planting a garden,
Yeah.
creating connections within the community, and really drawing on the support of your fellow students. You know,
Yeah.
create a page that you guys get to talk to each other and interact and share your knowledge and information, because ultimately this is not about you doing better than everybody else. This is about you guys together creating the best group of osteopaths you can, because if the people around you are better, you're going to be better. And so, yeah, look after yourself and look after your community.
Sage words.
There we go.
Wonderful. Kat, thank you so much for sparing the time to come in. We know you've just left clinic and you'll head home to some luscious greens from your garden. Reese, once again, great to sit with you.
It's always a pleasure. The second of many podcasts. And it'd be great to have Kat back on. Unfortunately, I've got to be somewhere in 20 minutes, called a job. So ideally, this podcast would go for much longer. So next time, if you can come on, whenever you can, it'd be good to get more in depth, because I feel that you've got a lot to say, and you're a very introspective individual that comes with a lot of wisdom. So
Indeed.
thank you very much. Thank you, Darby, for being the wonderful co-host.
My pleasure. Stay tuned next week for Andre Kleinbaum, a new addition to SCU, 2015 Pathophys lecturer, and new osteopath in Brunswick Heads.
Absolutely.
We'll see you
so
then.
on that note, thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Thanks so much, guys.
Au revoir.
You.